And so when we're looking at this, just to kind of set this up, I want you to understand two things when we're talking about following Jesus. First of all, Jesus is the one doing the calling. If I tell you about Jesus, I'm not selling pots and pans. I'm telling you God is saying something through me to tell you or someone else that there's a relationship and God's working on you, and He's the one doing the work. When you come here and you're wrestling with the fact that I want to, I really feel, something more and I'm longing for that, that's God at work. God is calling you to Himself. Scripture said God is the one who brings His sheep to Himself. It's not you rambling around here and just so happen we cross paths and we're all searching on our own. No, Jesus is the one calling each and every one of us at some level in this process. But the other thing to remember is that following Jesus is a conscious choice. We're not forced. I mean, certainly there's the whole, God's design and sovereignty and God working at us and drawing us to Himself and that. But He does it within the context of our free will. And we can sit here today and you can hear what I say and you can be led to be able to say, I want to make a change in my life. Or you can go off and get over to, Texas Roadhouse or the mall and say, maybe next week. I mean, that's a choice that you make. And we need to be able to understand that even in this context, every one of these disciples had a choice to be able to make in this as we look at this. So let's take a look at this and take some time examining a little bit. Matthew 4, starting at verse 18, this is what it says. As Jesus was walking beside the Sea of Galilee, He saw two brothers, Simon called Peter and his brother Andrew, and they were casting nets into the lake, for they were fishermen. Come and follow me, Jesus said, and I will make you fishers of men. At once they left their nets and followed Him. Going on from there, He saw two other brothers, James, son of Zebedee, and his brother John. They were in a boat with their father Zebedee, preparing their nets. Jesus called them, and immediately they left the boat and their father and followed Him. That's it. Jesus called and they responded. So what was happening in this that we can look at that helps us understand what does it mean to really be able to follow? What was the choice that was being made as we look at this? Well, first of all, I want us to understand that followers are choosing a relationship. Jesus isn't saying, hey, I got this system that you need to be able to buy into, and hey, come along and you can do it too, and you can create your own peer, and then you can pass it on and some kind of a networking program. That's not what it was. For Jesus to be able to say, to follow me, back in that day, there was rabbis that would go around, teachers, and they would find students, they would invite them to be able to be a part of what they're doing. Quite frankly, these are rejects because normally they do that when they're little children, and as they grow and they're not living up to the standard, they keep kicking them off and saying, "No, you're out of the loop." And then they get it to a point where they have a core of truly knowledgeable learners, and so every rabbi would have its disciples who are learners. And these guys apparently, somewhere in the course of their life, were said, "You know what? Good try, but you need to go fish." And so they had already blown it in that regard. But what they're recognizing is coming back is that I'm coming into a relationship with this person. That to be a learner, to be a follower, the actual word follower means come after. To follow this person is to be able to learn everything about him and be like him. That the greatest goal that they would have to say is that I can take on the very characteristic of this person that I'm following. And when they see me, they see him. That a person could look at me in the street and say, "Oh, you must be a follower of Jesus, because I can tell in the way that you behave." So for them to be able to study, to be able to respond, to be able to recognize this choice of following was to say, I want to be with Jesus. Not, I want to figure out the stuff that He's teaching. That's a part of it, but it's so that I can walk, I can be in the presence of this rabbi and to develop a relationship with him. Now, it's not just any relationship that they're talking about, because Jesus had the authority and the power to do what He said. They already seen that. In fact, if you were to jump over to Luke 5, we won't do that now, but mark it down and you check it out. Luke, who's much more analytical because he's a doctor, he writes the more detailed story of this particular incident. And what happened is they were sitting there on the shoreline and Jesus coming along and people wanted to hear Him teach, and it was crowding Him up against the water, and so He said, "Hey, let me get in your boat and push it out a little bit." And so He's teaching. So they're sitting in the boat hearing Jesus teach. When He's done teaching, He says, "Hey, let's go out and fishing." And so the fishermen go out. He said, "Well, you know what?" He says, we've already fished. There's nothing out there today." And this carpenter is telling this fisherman how to fish. "Well, no, cast the lot over here and which, if you're a really good fisherman, or any of us for that matter, no one likes anybody who doesn't know what we're doing to tell us what to do. But they said, okay. And then in that story, that's when they caught this huge amount of fish to where the nets were tearing. And immediately, Peter falls to his knees. Leave me, Lord. He says, I'm a sinner. That Jesus recognized that this man is far greater than any other rabbi, that he has the power to not only do miracles, but his teaching, as the Scripture talks about, he speaks with authority. So they knew they were following a man that had authority. A man that had power to be able to do what he says he can do. Matthew 28, Jesus himself said, all authority on heaven and earth has been given to me. John 14:6, Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one goes to the Father except through me. This is a man, when we talk about choosing to follow into a relationship, we're talking about a relationship of God himself, who can do anything that needs to be done, who can lead us to the kind of life that he says he's going to lead, who has a better understanding and knowledge of what life is really about than we do. That given the choice of doing what we want and doing what he wants, he is always the better way. That's who we're talking about here when they choose to follow. And added to that, the fact that is the promise that he's the one who's going to do it. Because he says to him, Jesus says, follow me. He says, and I will make you fishers of men. He doesn't say, follow me and maybe you can be fishers of men. The promise Jesus gives them, no, I am going to work in you. I am the one who's going to do it in you. You don't have to figure it out. When we say we're going to be a Christian, we come in here, we're going to follow Jesus, it's not like saying, okay, good luck with that. And hey, I hope, I'm going to be over here, and hopefully you can figure it out and you can get here. God comes to where we are, and he leads us to the place he wants to take us. That's what following is recognizing Christ will work from the place that we're at and draw us to the place he wants to be able to take us. He will do the work. And we can have that kind of confidence. But if we're to follow Jesus, we need to focus on the relationship. And that was one of the struggles that I had, because in feeling the frustration and feeling the fatigue and the burnout and recognizing that I was doing stuff that, it's all good, but it wasn't really what God was wanting. I recognized too that I'm focusing on the task. I'm focusing on my to-do list. I'm focusing on the programs and the things that need to be done in the church. And I'm not focusing on the relationship. And so you can appear to follow, and yet really you're not. We always have to stop back and say, are we truly seeking out this relationship with Christ, or are we just going through the motions and doing the agenda, and oh yeah, church at 10, this at 11, go there, that, read the Bible, go to the group, it's like these tasks. Because if you don't focus on the relationship, you're really not following. The second thing about this, though, is we see that followers are choosing discomfort. Now, let me explain that a little bit, because they're thinking, what? Who wants to choose that? Jesus, of course, was pulling them out of extreme comfort zone for them. There's no doubt in this day, if you're a fisherman, that means your parents are fishermen, your grandparents are fishermen, you're in a fishing village, it's what you do. You don't go out into college and learn multiple things and then just pick some job. Or this wasn't a hobby for them. This was their career. This was their life. This was something generational that they did. As I mentioned before, they've already failed being follower of a rabbi and trying to be able to figure that out. So this is all that they knew to do. And so Jesus is pulling them out of that. And they're choosing to step out of it. They're choosing, it says they drop their nets, they leave them behind, and they go with Jesus. That they have basically just burned that bridge and said, look, we're going off, and we're going somewhere totally different. Too many of us want to follow Jesus within the context of our comfort zone. We say, I'm willing to be a follower, I'm willing to be a Christian, I'm willing to do these things as long as you stay within what's good for me. One of the struggles of this last, as we've talked about, is we've lost some people that I considered very, in many ways very valuable. But one of the things that was difficult, and of course each one's difficult because every person has a definition of what they think the church should be and how we should behave and the music we should hear and all these kind of things. And if you're not focusing on a relationship as a leader, the next thing you find is you're going around trying to make people happy.